Hi, welcome to Tales from the Sky Lounge. It's a podcast about business, venture, and consulting. We go out there in the world and we find people who are making it happen in the tech world, and we go and talk to them and get their stories. So today in the Sky Lounge, we have Christy Johnson with BIP Ventures. Hi, Christy. Welcome to the Sky Lounge.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
So, Christy, tell us a little bit about how your early career went and how did you find your way to BIP Ventures?
Yeah, so I think for the normal path that people go through, I had a very unorthodox one. And when I went to graduate school, I thought I was going to be an expat. I got what's called an IMBA, so International MBA. And I thought that I would spend my career outside the U.S., probably with a very large enterprise company. And my first job out of school was it was a joint venture between the IMF and the World Bank, and they were giving microloans to very small companies. And so I had the nice opportunity to go to Costa Rica, and I got to work there a couple of years with very small businesses, mostly artisans, and working with them so that they had the capacity to pay the loan back. And it was a really wonderful experience. Got to work with a lot of wonderful people and got to see the impact that just small changes within a very small company can make a big difference on the outcome.
So you are a traveler. So you're in the right spot in the Sky Lounge.
Yes, that is true. Yeah,
that's awesome.
We always travel with our kids, and now both of them are going to school abroad. So the bug must have bit.
Wow. And what types of roles did you have in your early career? We always talk about entrepreneurs, the typical entrepreneur's journey. There's no such thing, right? Everybody kind of takes an interesting turn through their career, especially, as you get a little bit older, like we are. How did you grow up in your early career? What kinds of jobs did you have?
Yeah, so mostly sales. So and operations sort of naturally took place from that because I worked for a lot of small companies. So you had to essentially build all the infrastructure yourself and figure out what works and create your own opportunities. But when I came back to the U.S., I went into manufacturing and steel. So very odd also. I don't think there's a lot of people who choose to go into steel manufacturing, but I got an opportunity with a company out of Florida. And so I was working they imported rod and then they exported some steel, and it's called pre-stressed strand. And so I had the opportunity to travel extensively there as well. And, got to do something and see things that, I had no previous experience in, but everything was sort of universally the same, right? What you're trying to do is size up what the pains are that your, ultimate customer is trying to solve, and then figure out the ways that you can uniquely do it better. But it was definitely more commodity driven than anything that I've done through the technology.
Wow. And it's still product market fit. You still got to figure out what the customer wants, right? And you still have to kind of navigate your way through the market and give them what they want. Yeah. At some point, I guess, BIP Ventures came knocking, and tell us about how that happened.
Yeah, so that was also a very sort of serendipitous situation. We had a mutual friend who knew the founder of the firm, and I was actually at the time thinking about going into business for myself and starting a gym for kids. We had two young children, and that was when extra gaming was really a big thing. And so I was thinking, hey, we would have this gym where kids could come and they could play video games, but in order to sort of fuel the machine that they were on, or the Xbox or whatever it is that they were trying to do, they'd have to be doing something physical. So they'd have to be on the bicycle. And that's when the Dance Revolution and all that was there. So had a business plan. And so our mutual friend said, hey, you should talk to Mark about this. So he does a lot of this. And so just ran the business plan through him. And, I was trying to make a decision on doing a commercial lease, which I had never done. And it felt extremely scary. And he said, I know everybody says location, 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 but, sort of don't lever, your entire home, your, getting everything that you have at risk. And, I would just keep looking and make sure that the terms are things that, you can tolerate in terms of like risk, but also, there are other places than this one. So that was good advice. And then, a few weeks later, he's playing golf with our mutual friend and said, "Hey, did she ever make a decision on what she was going to do?" And he said, "I think it's beyond her risk threshold." And so Mark called me up and just said, "I'm looking to do this thing, getting ready to start a registered investment advisory firm." And he was talking about through it. And I said, "I think that you have me confused with somebody else. I have absolutely no experience here." And he said, "Yeah, I don't want people who, the whole system is broken. And we're going to, sort of revolutionize the way that it's done." And at the time, he had an idea, and it was like, I always say that he was like just a little ahead of the curve, because the like sort of robo advisors came in maybe 10 years later, but that was his idea, is that you bring sort of the same portfolio management techniques to that the high net worths get to, have the advantage of experiencing and the benefit of, and use technology to sort of bring that to the masses. And then that sort of moved into what is now become Buckhead Investment Advisors, and moved into a role there to sort of help operationally put all the, plumbing in place there. And a few years later, then he decided to launch the fund with some partners. And so I came over on the fund side to put in do the same thing, build the infrastructure. And then we were very small. So we had portfolio companies who needed help. And that was very much part of my DNA. So I had always, been working for small companies and helping sort of problem solve and helping them scale. So it was a variety of different things, new things all the time. And I found that super rewarding. And we ended up having a portfolio company whose founder got in some trouble and stepped in as interim.
Uh-oh.
And then I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to be the permanent CEO. And that ended up being a 7-year opportunity there, and was wonderful. I had very humbling experience, a very rewarding experience, and got to work with a lot of super smart, wonderful people. And we were able to build a great company, a great culture together. And then, it seemed like that was the right time to sort of turn it over to the next CEO, take him to the next level. And there was discussion at BIP Ventures that they were looking at sort of codifying some of the things that they were doing around helping their portfolio companies and helping them scale and grow. And so they call it performance engineering. So I came back in January of 2023 to move to the board chair for that portco, and came back in the capacity to help put it in, grow a team to help our portfolio companies.
That is so cool. And as a founder or former founder, recovering founder, you run into people on the venture side that are really great at spreadsheets and financial engineering. But what's super helpful and distinguishing is when you run into somebody like you on the other side of the table that's done it, right? And you understand kind of what it takes to run a company over several years, and what the challenges are, and what the hardships are. And sometimes it's not about math, sometimes it's about people, right? And
well, I'd say most times.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
we talk about culture
doubt.
a lot.
When I started working, in the sort of with the new hat on, I would hear things that were said, by not necessarily our investors, but by people on the board or whatever. And I would think, goodness gracious, I hope I never came across like that, or I hope I never said anything that was that ill-informed. I'm sure I did.
No.
But you're right. Like being in the shoes, and there's just, it's so evident too, because, this is tough,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like this is, and then you feel schizophrenic because one day you'll be feeling like you're just like one deal away from a really great month, quarter, year, and one deal away from it going the opposite direction. And, when you have to bring something in order to make payroll. If you've never lived that, or, just you've only got so much to spend, and you have to be so thoughtful about, how you do that. And, people who've never worked in those circumstances or have had unlimited budget or no repercussions when things don't go well, because, they're in an incubator inside a large company. And if it doesn't go well, then they all just move on to the next project, as opposed to like, I have to lay off people who, they have kids and families, and the one,
Hmm.
families that I know and I've met and feel extremely close to, that's, it's not the same.
Yeah. And so your current role is the performance engineering. You run the performance engineering function at BIP Ventures. So, a lot of venture places, it's just about the check, and then, hey, we'll check in with you at the board meeting. I think a lot of people are starting to figure out that, a lot of people can kind of roll the dice and pick investments. How do you view the performance engineering function? Surely that's got to make a huge difference when you make an investment, because if you think about, the time you spent with somebody, what is it, 3 to 6 months in diligence and, figuring out if you want to do the deal, and then what, 5, 6, 7, 10 years after,
Together. Yeah.
why aren't more people doing this? I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to come in and coach, teams that you've put a little bit of money in to grow them. So I guess, first of all, what do you do? Like, what's a great example of something that you do with a founder that, may not have all the pieces in place? They come to you, they've got part of the business, set up. What's a typical time when you pick that up and you start coaching them or helping them? What does that look like?
Yeah. And all sort of great questions. I think it's probably also important when you say, like, isn't it a no-brainer why people don't necessarily go and do this?
Yeah.
There's sort of like if you think about, and I think about the world sort of like in three big buckets. And so you have people who do like angel investing. And so to me, that's just like, you're still trying to sort of, make sure that you're basically exploring a concept, and can we get product market fit? And it sounds like those things are, but everything is super nascent, but you're basically just trying to get those first few customers and, continue to iterate and learn about whether this can make a viable business. By the time that we get involved, there's some traction, right? So product market fit has at least been identified. And so they know that they can get some paying customers, and they've probably, have some infrastructure in place, but probably not very much. So building is essential, and help in building is like the things that we focus on, because you're trying to get them to the point that they can scale. And then the third bucket is PE, who that's where you're normally accustomed to saying, oh, we have all this big bench of operating partners, or we have all these people who come in and are like subject matter experts, and they're going to help you. I think help is like a little bit different, right? Like what they're trying to do is like, those are more mature companies. And so they're trying to like drive efficiencies. They're trying to like feel, like oftentimes they're putting sort of two things together. And so they're like, trying to like get out redundancies, and they definitely have playbooks that they're like, this is how we do it. And so we're going to have you do it this way. We take a much more collaborative approach because we have to. I mean, we are definitely in alignment of what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you do the best work of your life and help you be madly successful. And so in order to do that, we have to, see the world in the same way in terms of like what it means to be a capital partner. So we're not the best solution for every company, because many times if they just want to check, we are absolutely not the right group to work with. And so they'll see that we pull back and trying to understand that. And by the way, this isn't because, it's so obvious. It is really obvious, but we've made the mistake in the past of like thinking that, oh, they were super cooperative during diligence, and so of course they're going to make great partners. Then after the check is written, then like, oh no, I didn't recognize that you were going to want to sort of weigh in on strategy, or we were going to talk through things and you were going to try to help. I don't need that. And so that was not a really great way to start, because we know that no matter what, people who are open not only to our help but any help, and trying to like, who are intellectually curious and who are constantly trying to sort of improve by leveraging the experiences of others, do better, right? So, and you can say that and put that against anything, not just growing a company, but getting better at anything in life. And so we've like gotten very conscious about being super explicit that this is what it means to partner with us. And then, it just starts with a self-assessment for them, because again, they're in the company. Typically speaking, people are really aware of what they do well, and they're also probably really aware of where they need help. If we're in diligence and someone's doing a self-assessment and they rate themselves extremely high and on everything across the board and can't think of anything where they need help, that's probably a red flag. And so I think through that process, not only can you identify, is this the right partner for us? Because again, it goes both ways. And so they're choosing a partner, we're choosing a partner. And as you said, we're tranche investors, so we can go through many stages as long as we believe in the investment thesis and we believe in the team. And if that still remains intact, we'll go multiple rounds with them. And so, and we'll also be very helpful in trying to find and bring in another partner, to sort of help us take it to the next level that is also accretive to the company. And so we're shoulder to shoulder in all of those things. And so we have really long-term relationships. And so again, you want to choose somebody where you have alignment on what it is that you're trying to do. But to answer your question, like, what does the process look like? It starts in diligence, talking through where they think they have areas that they need help on, where we see that, just sort of based on from the outside looking in, some things that we need to work on. Oftentimes that's augmenting their team and, get on the same page that what's going to be a priority as soon as we fund and, identify how that process goes. But typically speaking, we can get to the things that are going to move the needle the fastest by having those early conversations, but level setting, this is what it means to be a good partner on both sides.
Yeah. And have you ever gone through one of these, hey, it goes well, you don't have that entrepreneur that just wants to go alone and go fast. You have a coachable partner on the other side and they go, I just don't know, go to market, as an example. I'm an engineer, right? So I don't know the sales and marketing necessarily as a first time founder, right? And then you get in there, you do the go to market analysis, the big whiteboard. Is it ever, you ever had any surprises or ahas, when you kind of go through something like that with them that are just like life changing or, kind of almost blow up the company in maybe a good or a bad way? What is, you get any stories around that?
Yeah, well, I would say that I think that the thing that most often comes up, I hope that they all have an aha moment when we go through it, because that's sort of the whole exercise. And I think it's easy for us to say like, hey, you're trying to boil the ocean and you have to get focused. That feels really scary, right? Because there's also some cognitive dissonance that's taking place because they've just come out of a fundraising mode. And in that mode, everyone's like, make your TAM as big as it possibly can be. And so they're almost trained to talk about their market in a really large way. Like, hey, we can go service this, we can service this sector, we can do, we can find customers in multiple places. The second they take money, then I need them to start thinking about, okay, now we need to focus to the highest possibility for success from a product market fit, but also some value creation. And so that feels scary because they feel like, okay, I can fish the entire ocean. So I can get any type of fish and it works out like there's so many fish in the ocean. When you say yeah, but we're, our pond is that we have for them to live in is really a perfect temperature for trout. And we have trout food and we have the bugs that are in the water are perfect for them. So shouldn't we just go after the fish that have the highest probability of making our so successful? And so I think that trying to help them see that, then I think the recognition of the cascading effect of this, then we would only have to do, we would only have to focus on one marketing target. That's a lot easier. Instead of having 50 campaigns, we can do 5 campaigns. Oh, wow. Then if we did that, it makes our product roadmap so much more easy to talk through because we're not trying to serve these 20 different use cases. Maybe we can just focus on this one. And, just making them feel comfortable that, those other use cases and those other targets, those exist, but we only have we've got 3 people here, or we don't have unlimited runway and we don't have unlimited time to start to demonstrate that we can get the fit going and we can get that revenue engine sort of revved up. So I think that it's never, like, oh my gosh, we made a total mistake. We're like completely focused on the wrong thing. That doesn't happen. But I do think that like them recognizing like, wow, we are trying to do too much for too many people and starting to see that click because it really does make a difference, right? Like if you can get everybody rowing in the same direction because you've just been throwing spaghetti at the wall for a while to see what sticks. And so, almost getting permission to like, just like, let's focus so that we can just prove out one of these use cases, I think is sometimes just like, they feel like that, okay, this, like my gut was telling me to do that, but now this makes a lot more sense. So I think just seeing them gain confidence in their strategy because they've had an opportunity to sort of like take a step back. Because the other thing is so often we're just scattershotting around because they're just like, whatever's the issue of the day, we don't have time to pick our head up sometimes. And so kind of forcing that discussion and saying like, are we targeting correctly? And are we talking about our product in a way that resonates with the people that we're going after? If those two things we're not sure, we can probably spend a little time on that so that we can make sure that everything that we're doing is in alignment. And I think when those things start to click, because it feels scary at first, but then when you get the team in a room and they're talking through it, then I think that's like good things can translate from that. But that's happening sort of at the team level and not necessarily at ours.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it takes that outside party that can just say, hey, what about this? Or, I'm just saying there's a bunch of stuff over here in the quadrant, that I don't know what that is, but that looks fun. Right. And then a light bulb goes off why aren't we doing
that? A lot of concentration over there. Let's unpack why that is. They always, obviously they're going to have all the answers. We don't know things that to any level of detail that they do. It's just helping pull that out so that they can look at it, in a way that they probably haven't taken the time to do before, either because they didn't recognize that could be so impactful or meaningful, or that they didn't even recognize there was a process that they could go through that could help them glean that.
That's very cool. And then I think if I remember right, you do something that's really cool. You have all your companies come in once a year, and then you have a big powwow at the end of the year. And then, so maybe talk through that and what is that like? And then what engineered serendipity, some people talk about that, is that really a thing? And then, what do you see when you get that many people together in a room?
Yeah. So there's another dimension to that, which is we're also bringing together the investors with them at the same time. So there's two sides of it, but I think that from an investor perspective, it's really neat on both sides because I think it's a unique thing that, they're brought to a symposium that has every one of the portfolio companies that they've invested in. They can go straight up to them and ask them how the business is doing, like unfiltered by us. They can shake their hand. They can tell them that, hey, I'm invested in you, and they can, directly have, a conversation face to face. So it's unique from the perspective of the investor. On the other side of things is like, I think it's really helpful from like the portco to be able to see the people and put faces and names to people who actually believed in their concept and believed in their company. And to put like a human face with it, because oftentimes it feels like, oh, this is venture capital and this is like, like this doesn't belong to people who trusted you. Nothing could be further from the truth. And we actually have an interesting model because, our primary investor base are high net worth. So these are individuals who are making decisions to put money into their companies, and they have a choice on where they do that, right? So it's not huge institutions where there's not really faces behind the names. And so I think because we have that unique business model, it's sort of a leveling, like it's, it makes everybody understand that we're all in this together and that those people trusted you and entrusted you with sort of their life savings or their retirement money. And in the same vein, like these people are out there working hard every single day, trying to solve unique and big problems. And so I think there's really a good respect that comes from both sides that you might not be able to ingrain in people if you didn't have those types of occasions for them to meet. So the other side of that is then we like you said, it's a unique opportunity to have that, a group of peers that are going through the same thing. So, that obviously no two companies are like doing the exact same things or in the exact same market, but try to give time for them to, like, we can, do some educational components that everybody is struggling with, like how do you lead from, remote locations, or, how are you dealing with, the changes in the macroeconomic, situations, and like what are you doing to sort of, keep employees engaged, all of those things. And so, but then give them plenty of time where they can make those connections themselves. Oh, tell me what you do. And, and then be able to have people who are going through the same exact things. Like, they're up at night worrying about the exact same things, but they're at different stages. So like, I had to go through a riff, and like, or, oh, I'm facing a riff. Has anyone done this before? And how did you do that? And how did you mentally get through that? And, did that, what were the things that you thought you did that were really good and that helped, the remaining team stay motivated and stay in place? And, and also, I think it's super helpful. We have people in the symposium who get up on the stage, and it was funny because I didn't really think about this being a sort of a byproduct of the experience. Is they're like, that was super motivational to like hear them talk about where they were and some of the things that, and then they're up on the stage and they've got this massively, successful company that's doing so well, but they were where I was once. And that helps me understand it's possible. And they had the same challenges. And then, those people come off, and then they can ask them questions like, hey, did you ever have to do this? And they're, oh, did I ever have to do that? So it just makes things feel really possible. And it's like oddly motivational, because they came off there like, that was really motivating.
Yep.
And I never thought about it, but yeah, yes, it is.
I really, really miss those kind of rooms, when I was a startup founder, and, you get, pulled up by the previous generation, and those cocktail parties, like all kinds of crazy conversations happen, and I got to introduce 100%. You to this person, and those are really, really powerful events. You can't do them all the time, but it's super fun.
They really are. And like I remember somebody came up and they're like, they were in completely different industries, and they were like, hey, I talked to so and so, and they were like, I didn't realize they were doing XYZ, and we can actually like that. We're trying to talk about ways we can partner and do that. And you're just like, I never would have put those two things together. So, but now that you explain it, totally, that makes total sense. But yeah, you're right. Like you just never know what's going to be the outcome of like getting really smart, like-minded people in a room together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had an experience that a lot of venture operators don't have. You actually got to run a company that was a portfolio company. So I got to know, like, how did that happen? There's probably a story there. Like, if I know how business goes, so what happened? What happened to get you into that seat in the first place? Was there something weird that happened, or founder pitfalls?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, you just never, you think that the person that you're partnering with, and this particular founder got in some legal trouble. And so it like, when you say like, someday I will write a book, this is one that fits in that. But, you had a team of people, and, the product was, again, and these things always happen when you have to do the next round, like they're needing capital and you have to make a decision.
Diligence.
But we believed enough. Yeah. We believed enough in the product that, but we weren't entirely sure that, the product definitely wasn't fully there. And there was a lot of customers who were there for the founder because, that it had all been sort of founder-led sales, and he was also a consultant, so he had a lot of cachet. And so we knew they were sort of in the middle of, a rebuild of sorts, because they needed to, make the product a lot more flexible. And so we sort of divided and conquered, and Mark Wynn was working on the product, and I was working with the team and customers, and we were just trying to keep everybody, from like having a visceral reaction to the news. And we were just trying to get the new version of the product out, and, sort of get some validation on that before we had to make a decision about making some, additional investment there. At that time, we were also looking, to find the right CEO. And, as it went through time, the team came and said, why why won't you do it? Or why, have you ever thought about doing it? And, it was also a very
Yes.
small team. We were very close. Well, I really hadn't thought about that. And so then I went and talked to Marky, said, is it something that you want to do? And I said, I really do. I think that this would be, a great experience. And I think it'll make me better as an investor. And so we said, hey, let's do it for 2 years and try to get them stabilized. And then we can, find somebody else to come in and come back. And it ended up, that 2-year gig ended up being a 7-year gig. Learned a ton of things, made a ton of mistakes, and, worked with some really exceptional people. So, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, but I will say, it was very humbling, and, it's very easy to have ideas. It's way more difficult to make those, execute on those ideas. So, again, I look back on things that I probably said when I was on the other side of the table and hoped and was cringing. I think I probably did. But it definitely, helped me understand a lot, have a lot more empathy, but also just, this is tough stuff. And, it's just constant learning, constant iteration. You have to make you have to make decisions in the gray because you're never going to have perfect information, and not everybody's cut out for it for sure. But it was a super rewarding experience. And again, I don't think anything brings people together quite like being in the trenches like that. And there's something super rewarding about, having a small team with a big idea and, having a lot of disappointments, but some really good wins, and, living to fight another day. I mean, you just can't simulate how that brings you to people, and how it develops relationships in ways that I just don't think you can simulate otherwise. I mean, it's just a really bonding experience. And it's also I don't know that anything else. I'm sure there are things that are equivalently rewarding. I just have never got to that.
Yeah. So how many years were you there? You're still there, right? In a board capacity.
I'm still there as
if I remember
board
right.
chair. Yeah.
Okay.
But 7 years in the seat.
Wow. So you went through a cycle or two, some ups and downs. Any business cycle weirdness that you had to face while you're there?
Well, COVID for sure. And I think that probably created a 2 or 3 year sort of change in that time horizon. And I will say that also was formidable for me, because we moved from 100% in office to 100% remote. And you also had, you were just adjusting to everything that this new reality. We had lots of people who had young children in school, and they were having to, spend time making sure their kids were on Zoom calls. And so we had to be super flexible with hours and things that had never really challenged us as an organization. We were really fortunate because we were really tight when we went into it. So, there was a lot of trust built up. And so, as we started to grow and get new people, that took on a different challenge, that we'd never sort of faced before. But, I would say that, it was within the first 6 weeks of going remote, we lost our first and second largest customers. So that was incredibly scary. So when you think that, I turned to my husband and I'm not sure we're going to make it. And so, and then that's a whole different message for the team too, is okay, now you have 2 responsibilities. You have the responsibility of making sure that each of your coworkers is doing okay, so and this is uncharted territory, and we've never been here before. So, but we have to dig deep. And so for every, customer that we save, and for every new customer that we get, it could mean the difference between, the team size we have coming out of this thing. So let's make a commitment to each other. We're just going to dig as deep as we can. It may not be traditional hours that we're doing it on, and it may not be, in the ways, the standard motions that we're accustomed to. So we're just going to have to be super flexible. We're going to have to be super creative, and we're going to have to just, recognize that it's going to take all of us to get to the other side. So I think that just deepened the culture in ways that we had not been challenged before. So that was a really interesting time in which to navigate through. But it taught me a lot as a CEO Because I think like before that, I was like, how could we possibly work remotely? Like people just need to be together, And so, yeah,
Yeah.
technology can change that, and but also like being intentional about the way that you engage with people. Like if you walked around, the floor before, and you got to like ask people how they're doing, you got to see them, and you could respond to their body language, or they just seemed off. That doesn't exist anymore. So you have to make very intentional ways in which to figure out how people are doing and they calibrate. And then, you're having to be completely intentional of getting context around what's happening with the teams, because everybody's more siloed. And then you have to be very intentional at keeping the team together and figuring out ways in which they can sort of cross-pollinate. So that was, it was formative. It was definitely taught me a lot, but I think it also strengthened the team in ways that I didn't even know was possible. So in those ways, it taught me a ton. That like it was like sort of the second chapter of learning as a CEO.
Mm-hmm. Stretch you. You sound like a wonderful leader of people, and that's so important in culture. We keep banging on that drum. Culture and people. It all comes down to that, right? You take care of your people, they'll take care of you. How many of those policies persisted? So at this point, surely you have the option of getting a building and saying, okay, everybody come on in, we're gonna cater lunch or whatever. But I think a lot of companies have kind of now grown new muscles and have adapted to new ways of working. How far back did the pendulum swing toward in office, and then how many of those kind of new things did you adopt going forward?
Yeah, so good question. We actually stayed 100% remote because we made a conscious decision that we were going to take advantage of hiring the very best, no matter where they lived. So before we knew it, we're like, oh my goodness, 20% of the company doesn't even live in Atlanta. Oh my goodness, 40% of the company doesn't even live in Atlanta. So we definitely do lots of things to sort of keep that team connected. And like I said, as soon as we started hiring, that changes the dynamics too. Like, how do you norm somebody into the culture? And it has to just be threaded through everything, that like the way everyone behaves. And so when you have a good culture, and like it helps, right? Because you're bringing people into a system that already hopefully sort of, again, weaves in all the things that are important. So just small things, using, like making sure that you come together monthly. And so, if you compare the cost of travel versus what rent's going to cost you, you're still way ahead, but you can't expect that people who don't have FaceTime together care about each other in the same way that people who are just on a screen. So we are highly intentional about making sure that once a quarter, everybody comes together in person. Once a month, everybody comes together. You have to create opportunity for cross-functional things happening. You have to leverage technology. Like on Slack, they have a shout out channel. Those channels, those shout outs are then, sort of tied to the, core values. And so they're constantly being reiterated what's important. And I think, also the way that people are treated and welcomed when they join, that has to feel like people care about your success. People care that you're set up for success, that you have the right training, that you have the right onboarding, that you have the right understanding, you have the right tools to be successful. And then, everyone's sort of showers you with making sure that, you do have the support and that's cross-functional. It's just not your direct team. So just being as intentional as you can. So if you would have told me in 2019 that we would be completely remote, even when we didn't have to, I would have said, I don't think that's possible. I now absolutely do. I do think it's different, because it's a technology company. And so, and using technology, I do think when there's situations where you have like mentorship, that's super important through someone's career. So like this is a perfect example. At BIP Ventures, they're almost 100% in office because there's sort of an apprenticeship that has to take place, right? You're watching other people, you're hearing discussions, you're seeing how other people handle problems with the portfolio companies. There's tons of collaborations across, we have people who are what we call a platform team who's, engaging and helping support the investment teams. And so I think that this type of business where you have an apprenticeship of sorts that, being around the hoop just also sort of happens through osmosis that you're picking up things. I don't think the fully remote model would work. I think that if you were fully remote and someone was in office, like you had the choice, the person that's in office is going to accelerate much, much faster because they have the opportunity to do that. I think in certain companies, certainly like a technology company where there's you can leverage technology to keep the team together, it works just fine.
Yeah, and it's unexpected. When you have to make a change, it's interesting how people adapt. So one of the things we talked about like a while back was I asked you at some point before this everybody's got their idiosyncrasies, they're fun little things they do, like do you ring a gong, and you said I'm a holiday person. And I was like, oh yeah, that's really cool, but it's fun, it's that fabric, right? And so I can only imagine how do you do like Halloween, pumpkin carving, if everybody's like on Zoom, how does that, how did you make that? What is that like what had to change? Like, you got to keep going, right?
Yeah. Well, we had traditions that existed. I mean, everybody always made fun. Like Christy says that wearing a costume on Halloween is optional, but it's not really. And so we did, when we were in office, we had all kinds of things for every holiday. But we did these things called jib jabs. And so that actually became sort of like my legacy. Yes. Everyone was like, oh, she's going to do the jib jabs. And so they were like always the stars of the jib jabs. And I think people they said they hated them, but I think they secretly loved them. But, we would do things like that.
Love
and
to
then, we had, that's right. Then we had to be really creative, when we would do things like we would send out like cheese and beer kits, and then we would have someone come on and they would facilitate it, or you would like sort of facilitate sort of like the equivalent of a mystery dinner. We did cookie decorating, just trying to be figure out how you can sort of like recreate having an experience. So we did virtual painting together, so they were sent kits where it has the the paint and all that. But I think ultimately it's very, very hard to reproduce that. You have to have FaceTime, and you have to have activities that you do together, and you have to give people opportunities where it's not structured, where they can, have a beer together and find out about each other's families and what are the interests outside of work. And so we try to, again, facilitate all those. And there's always one in October. And yes, costumes are optional.
highly optional, right? So one more question for you. So we already figured out you're a traveler, and this is all about travel and the Sky Lounge. Do you have any interesting Sky Lounge or travel stories for us?
Well, I will say that I laugh when I think about my kids in the Sky Lounge, because throughout my life, I've done some things, but your kids never know it, right? They don't have any appreciation for sort of what you do for a living and, anything that you may have had an accomplishment with. So like, I always think, well, when they get to be adults, they'll look back and say, yeah, my mom did some pretty cool things. But our daughter goes to school 2.5 hours south of Budapest. And so we were taking her to school. And so, of course, you're like you have to have a long delay, and you're there 3 hours ahead of time. And I'm like, oh, let's go on a Sky Lounge. She's like, what do you mean? So like, this is like, and she tells all her friends, oh my goodness, you would not believe my mom has like this special place that she's allowed to go in the airport, so like, for whatever reason, that resonated more with my child than anything I've ever done professionally. So obviously awesome. It makes a really big impression when you can go in and you can get like as many Cokes as you want for free. So yes, free, that would be my story. Yeah.
Well, we had a great time with you here in Tales from the Sky Lounge. And if people want to reach out to you and interact after this, so what's a good way on the internet they can find you?
Yeah, they can just email me at cjohnson, JOHNSON at BIPventures.vc.
Well, thank you, Christy, for coming in the Sky Lounge, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for joining us in the Sky Lounge. Please like and subscribe to hear more from Tales from the Sky Lounge here and anywhere else you get your podcasts.